Yeah? Hey, good morning, Munich. Awesome, and thanks for technology that it's working. Good morning. This talk is about cyber resilience. My name is Constanze. I am a doctor, but you should not be taking any medical advice. That'll become clear in a second. And I'm an independent researcher, and I'm really, really grateful for the people that make it possible to do this in this day and age. Thank you very much. And with me is...
Hello, everyone. My name is Vadim. I'm one of the maintainers of Harbor, and we do some business around Harbor, so we provide support for Harbor and integration and coding. And my part will be then on the, let's say, the other part that's related to OCI here.
Right. So who here knows what SBOMs are? Yay! Who uses them actively? Some. Great. Now, I have with me a container, and let's read the bill of materials. All right, so 1 milligram of dimetindene maleate, purified water, and a whole lot of chemistry. Well, I'm somewhat, this is an allergy medication, and I'm somewhat of an allergy expert. But beyond the first active ingredient, I wouldn't be able to read this. Now, I'm not saying that this is not useful, what is on this, for those who understand. But so what do you do when you don't know, you find some medication, you don't know what to do with it, you don't know what it's going to do to your body, you don't know if you can drink beer with it? Well, lesen Sie die Packungsbeilage? Exactly. So, but why do you read this thing? Because the pharmaceutical company that made this, right, they spent years on clinical trials, experimenting with humans, what these meds do to the human body, how the medication behaves in the human body, so that you don't have to. Now, let's talk about different kinds of containers. And this talk is about, can we as software vendors do the same thing and use that knowledge that we have about a software? Because if I develop a software, I have should have the knowledge of how that thing behaves. And can I attach that to a container and transfer it to a user? So that when I, as an end user, download that thing, I get a description of the benign behavior, of the expected behavior with the software. And I can also do directly anomaly detection based on that. And more than that, and that's actually almost the key point here, when I then get an update of the software, with it comes an updated understanding of the vendor's recommendation of how that software should act. Now, IRL, it's not like this thing is 100% useful, right? In real life, there's so many corner cases. Everybody is different. So it's the same thing going to be here. There's so many pets out there, right? It's not expected that everything works. So we need to take into account, if we make this work, that people need to have their own opinions and override the settings if they are the local experts. Right. This talk, so my talk is about the runtime part, is about showing you that this is actually possible. And here we start with, when you normally are an end user, you install something. Let's say I'm looking at Dynatrace One Agent. So I'm pulling that down as an end user. I'm not affiliated with Dynatrace, and I'm installing it. I have an idea what it should do, but I don't have all of their expertise of multi-years of what that... Why is it doing this? Of what that thing should do. Sorry, 1 second. Technical malfunction.
The timer.
Yeah, probably. Nick. It's also showing different things here. Okay, anyway. So usually I get the data out in some form, we call it observability, and then I do some analysis, either with humans or with machines, of whether that was good or bad. In order to speed this up, I use rules. And they can be very simple, or you can have real-life threat intelligence feeds and make it all the way complicated, right? That's your choice. Most people are somewhere in the middle. Now, the idea here is that it's not me who writes the rules, but that I actually let the vendor write them and attach them to the software. And we call that Bob. And I really apologize for my malfunctioning PowerPoint. So currently, it's you. We want it to be the software vendor. And the reason for that is that that will achieve a humongous amount of scalability, right? Even if I had all the brains of all of the Dynatrace people combined in me, it's still just going to be one person that adapts one agent to their system. But if they do it and ship it to everyone, then that's real scale. And that's what we try to demo to you here, right? So I'm not exactly sure what I'm seeing versus what you're seeing, but that's the storyline. Let's go into the details. All right. If you've seen SBOMs, there's a spec called SPDX. So we can do the same thing for runtime profiles. I'm not going to go into details. You can enjoy that yourself. And my reference implementation, since we had the idea in London, is going to be using Kubescape. Kubescape is our incubating CNCF project, here represented by Mo. That's the little space panda here. And huge thanks to the Kubescape people. And what it does, it wraps, amongst other things, it does many things, it wraps Inspector Gadget, which is an eBPF tool that traces out the runtime behavior of an application. And here you can see the elements. Maybe you can see them. There's capabilities, there is events, there's network endpoints, there are syscalls, execs, and file path, file descriptors in there. So if I'm the vendor, I need to trace out my behavior of my software in these terms. And that's the way I achieve it is I take the behavior that I have, like behavioral tests, like traffic generation, load tests, whatever tests you do. That's how you should usually do your quality assurance, I hope. And run the profiler while that's happening. It might take a long while, right? And then you transfer it. So I'm giving you a live lab, and I'll switch to a live lab in a second, and it will contain the vendor aspect. This one takes long, and it's the complicated part of the thing, because you need to actually understand your software. You need to run those tests, right? So in here, there will be a sample PHP application, which is like a one-liner that shows you how you could do this. But you're very encouraged to take the 20 minutes and say, well, I'll do my own app, and I'll profile it, and I'll see for myself how difficult, how easy it is to do. Because the Kubescape configuration has to be different for the vendor and for the user. But, PowerPoint works again. Now, that's one thing, but the crucial part that I was also sweating it out really until Monday, like Monday night, 4 a.m., I was still panicking, does it really work? Anyway, so, does it transfer? That's the big question, right? And how far does it not transfer? We said IRL, there's always going to be exceptions, right? But I wanted to understand if they're systematic and we can template them and parameterize them away. So, source code is, I run the Storm Center for open source threat intelligence, and one of the repos there is called BobCTL, and there you'll find the source code. Now I'm going to switch to the live lab and show you how, as a user, we assume now that the vendor has done this, right? They created this profile, and we're on a different infrastructure, on a different kernel, and we're going to bring it in and see if we can do anomaly detection and if it works. So now the first question is if this works. Yeah, that's good. That's already really good. All right, so this lab is now listable. If you go labs.xemius, you'll get the link later.com. Under courses, you'll find one of the 2 community courses is now the Bob since last night. So we assume that we have this wonderful web app here. This is a Helm chart. I've given you different ways of helming this in, okay? So that you can use your usual tools that you hopefully know Helm, or you've heard of it at least. And in this web app, I've put a bob.yaml. Well, so this is this benign behavior profile with all the syscalls and endpoints and whatnot. I've recorded this profile. And now I've cloned it already. I've already installed it. So this is a installation. It takes about 2-3 minutes, so I've already done that. And what it did during the installation, it configured Kubescape for me such that it will do this tracing and the anomaly detection, and it deployed the app in its, as the vendor recommended it to me. And I had a values file to override values if I wanted to. All right. So now the first thing is I'm going to, in the right side, check if I get anything unexpected. So what I'm seeing here is Kubescape telling me, so this is the scheduler that was happening earlier. So everything Kubescape is monitoring now on my entire system, this is a K3S, what are the unexpected syscalls? And I will switch to a new tab here. And I've got this app installed, and now I want to have the positive test. So that means if I have a positive test of the expected behavior and I'm running anomaly detection on the other window, so if I test it now, what anomalies should I be seeing? Nothing, exactly correct, 100% correct. Okay, nervous. So theoretically, Helm should do a test. Come on, live anymore. Yes! So it takes a second to verify it. Yes, we saw nothing. That's exactly correct. And so if you did the full logs, you'd see some scattering. It did notice it. And now I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to verify that if I sample attack it, don't worry, it's not like this is an insulated system, sample attack it, that I get exactly the anomalies that I expect to get. So this verifies that my detection is working correctly. Goes even further than runtime rules, right? So I'm first going to forward my port, which is going to do some funky, okay, fine. So good old, almost. Make forward, so, yay. And now this is a injection attack. So this web app is vulnerable by default. And yes, so we should see two things. And if you look into it, there was an LS and there was a system call. These are long JSON documents. It takes 5 minutes to the labs. It's free for 1 hour per day. Try it out yourself, highly encouraged. And the last part is, so this was just one. Let's do a suite of attacks and then count, like for example, you can do this in CI/CD. You can say, I think it's 14 of them, that while this, shit's scrolling by, while this goes by, I can do an assert, are these exactly the anomalies that I was looking for? And that's actually pretty powerful because I cannot just have the rules, I can also check if they're working. So that's a whole load of chain of things that have to be configured correctly in order for this to work. It worked. So yeah, that was actually live, I hope you believe that. So for those of you who are doubtful, did she test all the kernel versions, all the Kubernetes versions, all the OS systems, all the different whatever not, glibc versions also important. Not yet, but I'm working on it, okay? So KCD Sophia in 2 months, I'll update you on the full parameter study. Currently you can find here a link in all the profiles of the differences. So if you see, now switching back to PowerPoint, if you see differences, are they expected? So is it all going to match? No, it's not all going to match. Mostly in the syscalls, you will see small but systematic differences. And they are mostly related to the glibc version that is baked into operating systems, or it is the kernel. Because since 4.4 to now we are 6.11 maybe, that's just a huge range, and the kernel did change. But in general, it is predictable, but there are differences. And I will be looking into how to exactly make this nice in the UX. But at this point, I hope that I have given you also a tool to convince yourself that I'm not lying to you. That's important to me. I don't want to, But now the question is, so okay, I've hacked this up since London, right? Used Kubescape, Inspector Gadget, eBPF, etc., etc. How can we make this into the OCI standard? You've worked with Harbor for a long time.
So the question now that we basically, or Constanze proved that it's working, and now we need to make a next step that out of the lab into a product, into a standard, and into the community so that it can be used, right? And one of the steps now to make it productized is to, from the consumer perspective, because from the vendor perspective, things gonna be probably quite similar as they are currently already. So the vendor has to do bit of a work to create those profiles. But from the consumer perspective, we of course want to make it super easy for the consumer to use these profiles and install them into their clusters and just use them, right? And this is where we follow the same principle, or try to follow the same principle, because the naming is similar, SBOM, and also that we want to attach the profiles to the OCI image, right? And then we need to have some an operator on the cluster. We call it Bob Daemon, right? Because why not? And so Bob Daemon is the operator that will fetch the profile from the image, and it will have like in the future. Currently, there is basically just one solution that is working with this bit of profile is Kubescape. So currently it's only possible to use Kubescape because there's just one solution that does this. But hopefully in the future, when the profile becomes more common, there will be other vendors to provide a solution. So the Bob Demon is designed in a way that is vendor agnostic, so it can create a profile. And then Bob Demon is also the one who has an understanding about the Kubernetes cluster, right? So he has understanding about the Kubernetes cluster, the kernel versions, all this aspect that might vary between the profiles, and it will then be able to create the profile or adapt the profile that comes from the vendor to the specific cluster, right? So because if some Kubernetes version does not do this call, we can, strike it out, and Bob Demon will be able to do this, and it will, of course, watch for the resources, find profile, and apply those manifests, right? So this is work in progress, and that's why it's called funding. So we need people who can implement this, right? So it's an operator, it has some interfaces, and so we're looking for people who will work on that or fund it in any way. And this will be then the next step to bring it out of the lab into real life or a real product space. Yeah.
Exactly. So we need people that give us feedback, and of course also vendors that test it out. And I literally, even if you have a small app, and just contact us on any chat medium or so, or PR, of course, is always, or issues or not. You try it out, you trace out your app, does it work for your thing? So I've recorded in the sample repo, there is like a simple web application, there's Redis, and I was even interested, so as a stateful set, and I am working on Tetragon, and that was kind of funny to with eBPF trace and eBPF agent and see if I can even transfer that, because it's really, really deep down. I wanted to see what kind of applications can be covered by this. Are there, one thing is front end, like this web app is like, has an API, but what about the deeper, more nested things that are deep down in the clusters? But of course, very few people cannot cover the parameter space. So it needs to be a community effort here, and also putting it into CI/CD.
And the labs are really practical, right? So there are two labs. One is from the consumer perspective, and one is from the vendor perspective. They're really approachable, and like when you run the lab, you get all the results, and then you can study the results and analyze and see how it is behaving, and you get a better understanding how things are behaving and what is the outcome of this whole thing. Yeah, that's I recommend for the vendor side and also for the consumer side to try out the labs and see what results you will get, because the profiles are really powerful, so you can really cover a lot of things with there. You can really analyze the behavior of application in quite granular way.
Exactly, and if you know any templating language, so I used Helm because I did a survey and it was 80-something% of you use Helm. So, but if you have, customize Argo, whatever Flux, you not your own thing, I'm pretty sure it also works in that language. I just used the majority language for reference. And yeah, if you don't want to remember this link, navigate to the main page and then under community content in courses, you'll find it. If you are a researcher or a student and you want to do anything here, just reach out. I'm also writing funding proposals, of course, for this. And at this point, I think we conclude, because we hope that you have some questions and some discussion. Yeah, so we call it the container Beipackzettel. And for those who don't know how to pronounce that word, Bob. Yeah, thank you so much, and I hope that you have some questions. Yeah, so we have quite some time for questions. So if you have questions. I think. Just keep the mic? Yeah. Okay. And thanks so much for Lynn. Super quick, big shout out for the ones that have trusted me since the beginning and give me their medal just to use without any expectation in return. That's a huge thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, really cool presentation and cool topic. I was wondering, you mentioned earlier that probably in some environments there are special things which are expected different behavior. And have you already looked into how, for example, if I deploy that a bit of behavior into my own cluster, how can I tell it, okay, in this environment it's expected that you call a specific URL or whatever.
Yeah. So, so you can, I'm not sure if, let's see if we can do a making this bigger thing. Somewhere here. All right. So yeah, I have, for example, here,
I think it still shows the presentation.
Thank you very much for pointing that out to me. No, literally, because, so let's, I hope this is big enough. So for example, here you have an endpoint, direction endpoint, port 8080, do you see this? And then with Helm, this is like host. I'm inside the cluster, I'm using the DNS resolution, and I'm trying to make this bigger. 1 sec, so you can actually read it. Does this sort of answer your question while I'm fighting my setup? Do not just. Yeah, no, that's it. Exactly here. So you see that this you can basically edit it by hand. So this is a network endpoint to add. You can also do, so Kubescape also has different CRDs where you actually literally have known network, or known endpoint. But then you use a different CRD.
Okay.
Yeah, so two options, yeah.
The other use cases that you mentioned is that what are the differences? Like there are some differences in the operating systems, right? So that some operators do some syscalls and some other operating systems don't do some syscalls, and you will see that in the profiles, right? And then hopefully in like with the Bob daemon, it will be able to figure out which syscalls are related to which version, and then it can filter out and create a profile for your specific environment, then, so that those differences can be covered.
Right, so yeah, there is in the CI/CD pipeline, there's a large matrix of tests. And for the syscalls, it's probably a superset, and we imagine that there is a daemon, so two-step installation that queries which, yeah, all of these parameters from the cluster, and also gets you maybe the endpoints, like which CIDR is your master, your Kubernetes master installed, and parses that into the template at installation time.
As a vendor, you need to test your application. I mean, you should anyway, right? You should anyway test your application to different environments, and yeah. So, as a commercial vendor, you definitely need to test OpenShift, Kubernetes version, whatever, 31, 35, 33. You would do events like this, so it should not be a surprise.
And the other thing is that you can use Globber. So here you see this, these are placeholder languages here. There's an asterisk, and there you see the 3 dot. So as a vendor, you have to substitute, because a lot of tokens or mount slices, kubelet slices, they have these UUIDs, typically date and some nonsense, that you need to substitute out, because they're, yeah. But this is, I think, relatively self-explanatory, but you have to do it.
Any other questions?
How's the notification working? How do you get notified when something is blocked?
So this is the Kubescape implementation. If we go to the first part of the lab, here, so they have a picture of the architecture. So this is a part that is not part of the Bob. I'm just piggybacking on the shoulders of giants. So this is Node Agent's architecture internally. It diffs, so it puts that CRD into etcd. And so it diffs each time the Spectre gadget there's a certain time frame in which it reads what are the actual syscalls, file scripts, etc., versus what is stored. And that diffing goes into alerts, which you then can put into Alert Manager. So this is a part of Kubescape's architecture on top of the tracing itself that we're making use of here.
Okay, so no events, for instance, like a kubectl event or something. Would be handy, maybe.
I don't think it. No, there are no events like you might also be flooding, because what is happening is a lot of deduplication happening. And I've done this myself, and you get flooded so quickly, so I'm not sure if... I'd be careful with going for events.
Just interested.
Yeah. No, this is also why I piggybacked on an existing system and didn't try to implement this myself, because it's hard to do this whole DDoP behind the scenes. Thanks for the question. Good question. Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, yeah.
There are already so many methods with which, let's say, Helm chart vendor could add seccomp profiles, SE Linux, and so on to the app. What makes you optimistic that vendors will publish a BOP instead of just adding these hard controls?
Well, they are different, right? So if I do a seccomp profile, that's enforcing, whereas this is alerting, and it does anomaly detection. So and I mean, the other question is how many do really publish seccomp profiles? And especially as I have not seen a single, and show me a single SE Linux profile that comes with a Helm chart that works. Sorry, I like SE Linux, but I know how much work it is. Whereas the thing that convinced me was that I think 1 week after we had the idea, I had a prototype that was essentially this, and I didn't have to do much. Okay, there's some like nonsense with template hashes that are annoying, but details. Whereas, yeah, SE Linux, I'd be careful. And seccomp in enforcing mode, yeah, especially because the syscalls differ. If you don't have a superset, I haven't seen anyone supersetting the syscalls systematically. Yeah.
But you still would need to do that for publishing like recommended profiles, right?
Either you superset them, yeah, or you, as the Bob daemon, basically read out which kernel version is it, and if that kernel version was, well, in combination with the glibc, if you have that combo already. But so it looks like it's already plus minus 10 syscalls typically that differ mostly. So, but I'll be careful.
Thanks.
Yeah. So why nobody is doing it? I think because of the risk of breaking it, and also because we have no standard. So lots of vendors have individual tools that can do this. Like almost everybody can trace it out. That's not the magic. The magic is the transfer.
Great talk. I have another remark. We talk now a lot about the security part of it, which is great, of course. What you mentioned was that you have to profile your app to basically know what kind of behavior it has. I would even turn it around, because test coverage is a really hard problem too. So you could even, I won't say abuse it, like leverage it to increase a lot your test coverage of your real-time application, because this is a big problem too. So yeah, I really see a lot of potential there.
You can also do performance profiling. Now, I'm not in the performance space, but for example, why does my app not work on my OpenShift, but it works on the GKE just fine? And it's an indicator. And since, yeah, it's one step further to a flame graph, but at least you see the objects that are loaded here, and maybe it's one of them. Gives you an indication, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
So you can use it for debugging too, actually. Totally. No. Yeah, totally did that. Yeah.
Any other questions? More questions? No? All right. Then thank you, everyone, for attendance.
Thank you.